Back in 2005, Monolith Software and Warner Bros. Released Fear, a tactical shooter that juggled intense shootouts with slow burn horror. It was met with critical acclaim and praise in both regards by critics and fans alike, but that was 14 years ago. More than a decade of technical and design innovations has passed, which begs the question, is Fear still good? The answer is no. It's just as great as it was when it came out. Fear's story is rather simple at first. The Armacan Corporation was conducting experiments in psychic warfare when one of their commanders goes rogue, seizing control of a cloned army to tear them down. In response, the US government sends in Fear, a military branch specializing in combating the supernatural. But as you track down the commander, Paxton Fettel, a much larger agenda is revealed. It's the type of story where, while there is a clear-cut goal, there's something much bigger going on behind the scenes, but whether or not you see it is all down to whether or not you actually look for it. A lot of the plot points feel like they're ripped right out of a pulp magazine and shoved through the filter of the early 2000s a la Blade. And it works, largely due to it being very to the point thanks to a small cast of characters with easy to understand motivations, something that's helped by some stellar voice acting, with Fettel in particular stealing the show. Every word his actor delivers is just dripping with pure malicious honey, almost like he's the devil himself.
The dead man's name was Charles Haberger. I remember him. But are the memories mine or hers? It makes no difference. He deserved to die. They all deserve to die.
Now, Fear came out back when the over-the-top nature of old-school shooters was on the decline, but before Call of Duty defined the genre in the mainstream. So looking back on it, it now occupies a solid middle ground in terms of gameplay. You have the usual weapons, pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, but there's also a few originals, and they all feel awesome to fire. A personal favourite being the Penetrator, a gun that shoots giant nails that stick enemies to walls when they're dead, and man, using that thing, it never gets old. The actual enemy encounters are tense and emphasize thinking on the part of the player thanks to how smart the enemy AI is. The enemies come in squads that will verbally communicate and coordinate to try to flank the player. It actually amazes me how well this AI still holds up. Seeing them change up tactics on the fly puts even the most competent AI from most contemporary games to shame. But what really makes the shooting unique is its inclusion of bullet time. Now, I know that these days bullet time is a very common mechanic in shooters, but Fear was one of the first to not just implement it, but popularize it, and boy does it still look cool. Shooting an enemy through the window and watching the shards rain on the floor while the enemy falls to the ground is always beautifully sublime, and a favourite thing to do back in the day was to use dual pistols with the bullet time because it made me feel like Neo in the Matrix, and after revisiting it, this is still the case and it's still balls of fun. But of course, this is also a horror game, and yes, it is still scary as all hell. The quieter moments between the shootouts put you into the right mindset to be scared by the more out there and overt scares. And this is thanks to some impeccable sound design and dynamic lighting, creating a tense atmosphere that keeps you on edge. Something that's helped, once again, by the voice acting. With the exception of Fettel, every character comes off as just a regular person, which juxtaposes the horror elements when they're prominent. There's nothing like climbing down a ladder and then seeing a little girl in a red dress standing where you just were that then disappears. This is also helped by how well the graphics have aged. Now, I'm not going to say this looks like Crysis, but Fear does still look good, with a unique look brought about by Monolith's Lithtech engine, though I can't say the same about the environments or the art direction. The settings are rather drab and uninspired, with the player exploring an industrial area, office blocks, a ghetto, and a lab, which all tend to blur together into one long, almost indistinguishable level, something that isn't helped by the game using the same brown and grey colour palette that plagued the game industry for around 5 years sometime after its release. But a much bigger issue is the game's technical problems with modern hardware, where the frame rate can crash to single digits. Thankfully, this problem can be fixed with a quick search on forums for a downloadable zip folder and a quick copy and paste. Now, it's worth mentioning that the version of Fear I got my hands on was the Platinum Edition, which comes with the two standalone expansions, Extraction Point and Perseus Mandate. These weren't made by Monolith, but instead were developed by Timegate, the guys behind Section 8, and one of the teams that helped out on Aliens Colonial Marines. Compared to the base game, both of these expansions did show a steep decline in quality that really just boiled down to all new people trying to add to someone else's work and not really getting the finer points. Extraction Point takes place immediately after the base game, game, and despite the expansions not being canon to the wider series, it loosely acts as Fear 1.5, detailing your escape following the ending. The big issue with this expansion was that the combat just isn't balanced properly. I played through the base game on hard for this review and did the same here, yet despite playing it at the same difficulty, I noticed that I was going down a lot quicker, and this was thanks to the enemies dealing way more damage. This was beyond frustrating, and it genuinely forced me to lower the difficulty just so that I could have a fair chance of getting through the expansion. Meanwhile, Perseus Mandate takes place around the end of the base game but focuses on a different Fear team, with their own objectives and running into a new threat operating in the shadows. Thankfully, Timegate did learn from their mistakes with Extraction Point, and the damage output is better balanced, so combat can be enjoyed on hard. Both expansions also add some new enemies to fight and new weapons to experiment with, and experimenting with these is satisfying. On top of that, despite existing in a different timeline, they also go out of their way to expand on the lore, which is nice. The only issue that both expansions share is that they're just not that scary. The scares in the base game work because they're built around slow burn tension and subtlety outside the shootouts, so when there's something loud and in your face, it's all the more impactful. Here, the scares are big, loud, and they're right in your face all the time, with some jump scares thrown in that really don't hit the mark. There is no doubt about it, Fear was a masterclass in how to balance action and horror in its heyday, and it still is now. If you never got the chance to play it back in the day, or you're just nostalgic, it is still worth your time. I can't say the same about the expansions though, but they still managed to offer up some solid action, and they're a nice addition for extra bang for your buck. Just make sure you get it off GOG. On Steam, it's only available in a franchise bundle that costs around $80 Australian, and just to play a 14-year-old game, that's a complete rip-off. Either way, go play it and get ready for a bloody good time. Alright, thanks for checking out this review, I really do appreciate it, and if you really liked it then please, by all means, hit like, subscribe, and maybe the bell icon for good measure too. Sorry this review's so late, my original mic died on me and I had to wait for a replacement, and then I went through all this drama just getting this thing to work right too, but that's in the past now, and this review is done. Now for upcoming game reviews, I actually don't have anything planned right now due to monetary constraints, but I might do another retro review to help go through my backlog a bit, and for movie reviews, I got a review of the new Godzilla and Rocket Man in the pipeline, but beyond that, I don't have anything planned just yet. But regardless, I've got all that and more coming up like usual, so by all means, please stick around.